Good evening. It's my honor and privilege to welcome you to the daily BW Dialogue. Today, I have a guest whose experiences in multiple industries, multiple sectors. He's worked in the financial services sector. He's worked in the private equity, venture capital space, and now he leads a formidable, large conglomerate. Let me welcome Mr. Mahesh Chhabria, who's the managing director of Kirloskar Industries. Welcome, Mahesh, to this BW Dialogue. Thank you for talking to BW Business World. For all our viewers and subscribers, this is live on the businessworld.in page. This is live on all our social medias, the Business World Facebook page, the Business World LinkedIn page, the Business World Twitter handle, and the Business World Instagram handle. Mr. Chhabria really needs no introduction. He did his chartered accountancy, and then he joined a financial services firm. He rose through the ranks, and then he joined private equity. He worked with 3i. He was part of the leadership team at 3i. He's part of Actis, and now he's the managing director of Kirloskar Industries. Let me welcome Mr. Mahesh Chhabria to the BW Dialogue. Mahesh, let me start by asking you, how have been the last 17, 18 months for you, both personally and professionally?
Well, in my sense, very, very exciting and very challenging at the same time. The challenge came obviously because of the outbreak of COVID, which we are all familiar about. I'm not going to get there, but it came out of the blue. It meant that we had to suddenly stop, pause, refresh, and restart again. Let me explain this to you. So it meant that obviously none of us could go into the office. First 3 months, none of our factories operational. It meant that we had to, in turn communicate to our customers, to our employees, to our board, to every stakeholder, be it our supplier, dealer, vendor. And it took, almost all of March, from March 23rd, I remember, till the 2nd of April to, just go through and live with it. We weren't familiar that it was going to actually stop, and go on for so long. Our initial estimate was that this may perhaps last only till May. And then, obviously the surprise hit us later, where it got extended till June. And then factories started only last week of June. And from July, again, the factories were not allowed to operate at full capacity with full teams. So obviously it meant a lot of rebalancing on the supply chain. Not just the supply chain rebalancing, there were also issues on account of labor living with fear, not wanting to come to the factory and not willing to even collaborate with you to understand the nature of the problems that we were faced with on the shop floor. And it took a lot of conviction, a lot of dialogue, a lot of cajoling to make that happen. And fortunate for us, the unions and all finally stepped in, and they understood that this is going to extend for way longer than what was anticipated. And how long could you keep, labor back home? How long could we be all away from our offices? The good part, at least, is that in all of this, the office guys managed to, migrate using technology as we are using right now on this platform, to either Zoom or whatever platforms each one used. And then we got connected. All systems on the IT backend worked exceedingly well to ensure that we were always on, connected with each other, and we could do all our work through the video calls and audio calls, whatever may be the chosen path. The other good thing that came out of all of this was that because the lockdown was so severe, we actually went back to the drawing board to see what were all our cost elements and where we could cut costs further to, become more agile and nimble. And these were all elements of cost, to begin with fixed cost and then to semi-variable cost. We worked on it extensively across all our companies, and figured out that there was scope to actually reduce that down. I'm not going to get into specifics because each company had a different product, different offering, different service offerings, so the numbers will be very different. But across the board, that was the mantra. And across the board, the other mantra was that how can we make labor more productive with the shortage of labor at one end, and also ensure that labor was also willing to adapt to work on different timelines. So, the shift timings were changing at that point in time. We had issues of getting them inside the factory, getting them back home. And by the way, should anyone have COVID or his family have COVID, then you have to rechange the shift patterns again to get someone else. So it had to be flexible. So a lot of this came handy because we learned it along the way. Frankly, there was no solution of one size fits all, but we learned along the way. The good part is that the customers also were faced with the same challenge. So they understood it to the T, and they were pretty supportive as well. They also went online to actually have discussions as to how we were going to meet our supplies to their networks or their platforms. And we do a lot of B2B business, so it was critical. And then also what happened is that the challenge was largely felt by the suppliers and the vendors because they come largely from SME, MSME space. So they felt the brunt because they were not used to, making these kind of changes as rapidly as what we did using technology. They didn't even have a fully informed professional team to work with. And they sought help. Some sought help on financial terms and some sought help which was more managerial or systemic. So we had to offer it to them to ensure that their factories are working for our factories to keep working. The other good thing that happened is that this time we actually communicated to all stakeholders pretty aggressively. When I say aggressively, there was not 1 week where we did not go back to our board to inform them what was happening. The boards were interested, suppliers were interested, the dealers were interested, the customers were interested. So we had to actually have a plan in place that who's going to communicate to whom. And now I'm coming to the last piece. We are a large conglomerate with factories across many cities and states. Okay, each state had different provisions on the COVID protocols, the compliance. We had to adapt, had to follow, had to communicate again, and had to ensure all-time, full-time compliance. And how do we reach out to ensure that our workers were all safe at all points in time was a major challenge, because you can get them into your factory, but how do you control what's happening at home? So it actually made us create a database of what actually happens with the people working for us in our factory or in our offices. The database was created, and that we used as one starting point on contact tracing if the need arose at some point in time. But it also came in handy when, let's say, the government started giving out vaccines, because then we had the database ready. And then we had to only ensure to see that the workers first at the factory and the office were vaccinated, and then take the measure and move to ensure that everyone else in the vicinity also get vaccinated. Now we finished the exercise with vaccinations across all our plants and factories. 94% is the number. The 6% is still not done simply because they went through COVID. They haven't finished the 3 months. So we have got to wait, but we ensured that we vaccinated almost everyone. And we are very clear that we will go ahead and finish the second dose for our teams as well, so that we ensure that we are back to work in full force as the government eases the environment and the regulations, allowing everyone to work from either home, from office, or from the factory. So it's been a significant learning. And the last bit is, even where we are supplying externally, and we do supply some part of our products externally, the same challenges were being faced even by our customers in those markets. But they never understood the severity. India had the most severest lockdown, if you are familiar with. And they never understood it. So we had to adapt and communicate differently that this is India, this is the regulation, this is exactly why we are faced with the challenge. And at the same point in time, you're familiar with what happened globally in terms of trade. So supply chain lines were completely, affected. We didn't have containers in the first place to ship, even if the products were ready. If products were ready, container charges were much higher than what we normally face. So how do you, pass on those costs? And then once the lockdown got relaxed a little, you add the commodity surge in and through commodity inflation. So, everything has been a great learning, because you don't see these kind of surge in commodity prices so fast and so sudden. Again, that means that you got to go back to your end customers. They fully track the commodities that we buy. It only happens through negotiation. So with a lag effect, you get to get the benefit of the enhanced price increases. So all told, I would say, exciting, challenging, great learning, and a great measure to understand how all your stakeholders behave.
Thank you for that comprehensive answer to that. And I agree with you that there were supply side challenges, there were internal employee safety issues, and there were demand issues. At all three levels, you had to be taking a stock on a daily basis and making sure all the stakeholders were on the same page. Now, let me ask you, you already talked about, I keep saying we're in a 3C economy: a collaborative, a compassionate, and contactless. You're in Bombay, I'm in Delhi. We're doing this conversation. In olden times, I would have met you in some city, would have sat across the table and done it. Of course, the virtual digital economy has got accelerated. Uh, Tell us, what are the changes that are permanent and are here to stay, especially when we discuss the future of work? And tell us the changes that are temporary and possibly, uh, we will use them till we are compelled to use them. So give us a sense of what is your feeling.
Well, our belief is that certainly when I talk of work from home and work from office, it's certainly a significant change. And I don't see all of us going back to the office. So let me give you an example. One of the learnings also is that, if you're employing a front end force, which is only interacting with the customers, does it really need to be in the office, or does it need to be at the customer end, or can be traveling all the time? Now, travel is impaired because of COVID, so everyone went digital, right? So that digital conversation is also a systemic challenge and an issue to begin with. How do you record what you're doing with your customer? How does it get documented? How do you negotiate with a customer on a real-time basis as we are chatting right now? And how do you then go back to the drawing board and come back with a solution which makes sense for an offering to the same customer? Now, is the turnaround time of the sales force as productive, not as productive? We had to again go back to learn. We figured out it is actually more productive. The customer is seeing you, he's talking to you, he can, all that you can't assess is the real behavior because physical expressions may not be as apt on a, virtual call. But otherwise, the customer was really understanding. You had your presentations with you, which you could present real time, and you could discuss across the board and strike a deal, for example. Now comes the challenge that even if you struck the deal, but the customer says, guys, when will it reach me? And that's the challenge that you have to face. So again, a team which works on supply side was given the data real time thanks to technology again, and saying this is the commitment that the customer wants. Can we supply it in this time period based on challenges that are linked to either container availability, truck availability, road, trucking and logistics availability, worker challenges on loading, unloading. So there were a host of them. But I'm saying that all of them again use technology thanks to the virtual world, and ensure that it still worked, and it works very well. So the biggest learning here is that the front end force certainly can and still adapt, partially out of office and partially out of home. And this is here to stay. Okay. Now coming to the back end part of the business. So a lot of support services, for example, and let's say support services could be branding, communication, and the likes. Well, that can happen also at home, but as long as you have all the wherewithal and the new tools of digitized world to make that happen. If digitization has gone to the depth of the organization, you have to train people, you have to skill, to reskill people. So skilling is also a thing that we've kind of learned during this whole period of time, that we have to invest to skill people, give them the tools to enable work from home to still be productive, because otherwise work from home is not productive. And the third bit is that even if I were to do all of it, how do I measure the output? We are still learning this, by the way. Nobody has a real answer whether work from home is as productive, more productive, or less productive. Our view, as I see it, is it is productive. But if you were to ask me to quantify how productive, I still don't have the data. We are still doing a lot of data analytics. But the general feeling is that it is by and large productive. So our view is that if there were 100 people, let's say, coming into office, maybe in the future world of tomorrow, there would be 70 or 75% back in the office. The 25 will never come back in the office. So it's quite likely that you are going to shave that off, and you make them work out of home or be mobile all the time and leverage technology. Or they could be at the customer end as well, doing a real-time discussion with us on the workflow. So that's possible.
Fantastic. Again, very real inputs into how the organizations evolved in the last 17 months of work from anywhere, virtual work, measuring productivity, making, and a lot of businesses are touch and feel for them. I mean, manufacturing cannot be virtual, right? It cannot be. Uh, some processes can be virtual. So thank you for taking us through that. Now, let me ask you, recently you underwent a rebranding exercise. What necessitated that, and how did you evolve the current thought process?
Well, I must take you back to our group's history. So, it in our sense is not just a rebranding. We call it a refresh, actually. And I'm only highlighting certain aspects of the refresh, and it goes back to what the forefathers of our group did. And this is 130-year-old legacy group. Okay. Now, when you go back and do what you have to do, the forefathers taught us that you must always invest into society, invest in your customer, invest in your employees, and invest in your stakeholders. When that is ingrained into you as a value system, you have to also see how the environment around you is evolving for you to address each of the stakeholders that I mentioned. And that's when the refreshing thought came, saying that, well, from the first iron plow made in the country to the engine, to the genset, to the compressor, to the chiller, now to new businesses, be it real estate and NBFC. The forefathers taught it, and we are just carrying forward that practice and value system even today. And as I see it today, the customer around you is also evolved. So it's not about you evolving. The customer is also much more, let's say, informed, far more tech savvy than what you are. So you are also investing. And one of the learnings again from digitization, from the COVID experience, is digitization. So how much have you invested in digitization onto your platforms? And when I say platforms, on your products, right from products to seeing how the product is working for a customer on his factory floor. It throws out a lot of data. So we have an IoT device installed. We are the first to actually install an IoT device on our gensets, and now we have it across all our product categories as well. So it's a great learning as to, we can now move the model from not just selling a machine, but to tell a customer that we are ready for preventive maintenance. We can see the working of this product onto your shop floor. This is when it'll need an oil change, a gear change, or whatever it is, because all data is there. So it is actually compressing the time to, make the change on a preventive maintenance contract. It also helps the customer because he can then plan accordingly his production schedules and is ready for it. And therefore, it gives us more connect with the same customer. So the customer experience has got enhanced thanks to digitization. So if we do not refresh the brand, how will it reflect the change on account of technology, digitization as well to make the customer feel right? Changes are also visible to us on the platforms in which we transact. So earlier platform was merely sending invoices and bills and whatnot, but right now it's not the same. So we can also do the same virtual interaction as we are doing on this call, but the customer also feels delighted with this kind of an experience and no visits to his factory as well. Now and then you can allow him the flexibility to complete the transaction on a web platform if you are fully enabled to a fintech app on the back end. I'm saying the customer is demanding it. Both the B2B customer is demanding it. The B2C customer is demanding it. You are also evolving and moving away from manufacturing to services. From services, now you're offering solutions. So we are not merely a manufacturing company. We've also evolved to actually offering solutions. So what was earlier perceived to be a sale of, let's say, an engine or a genset is now to say, I can give you all your energy requirements. What else can I do on the energy platform for you? So therefore, the language that you're communicating is different. So therefore, your brand also and the mark has to encompass what the offering also is. So that was also one of the reasons to change. And then obviously with the group, it's cash rich, doesn't have any issues. It's been generating cash. So therefore, the need was felt to go into newer verticals. So with the newer verticals also, you need to have the messaging across the customer subsets that you're trying to serve. So that was the reason to look at the refresh.
Fantastic. And also, when you are embarking on a new journey, even the internal stakeholders need to feel a new energy. We need to feel a new orientation. And sometimes the branding is part of that. I'm not saying that's the
You're
only
so
way.
right. We actually revisited all our values and figured out that the values also needed to, reflect the current times, the current environment, and the internal consumer and customer is equally important because, as I said, we had to also invest in him to reskill him to get back to the plant, reskill him to also work with a laptop and a technology platform. But he's now kind of ready and excited with what got presented to him, and therefore he's also saying, I'm good to go because you invested in me, not just for reskilling me, but you also changed about the way you're thinking about me. So for one example, there is when we asked for data about the family, the contact tracing, he asked the question, why are you thinking about them? I said, boss, in contact tracing, if I have the information, I can give you an ability through the conglomerate architecture that we have to ensure that they are also safe and secure at home. They are also healthy at home. We also have, we invested in a HR MS platform. It's called the top of the line management system platform, where we have given them access to, let's say, all kinds of assistance on skilling, on medicines, if they want to reach out for medical help, be it physical medical help, mental health. We have the platforms running at the back end, which are all tech enabled, by the way. So these are investments that have gone in the last 17 months, but they are equally excited and happy because now, they're familiar with it. We've kind of taught them, how this is benefiting them, and they are using it. So, the best case is when they start using it and see the benefits, we also are equally encouraged. So it's you see, we got to take everyone together. You can't be in isolation, sitting in your office or in the boardroom.
Absolutely. I'll come to your business and how has your business changed. But let me, before that, ask you a larger question. You spent time in private equity and venture capital. You invested in companies. You sat on the board. You had to discuss valuation with the shareholders, with the founders. You helped companies go public. You exited at the right times. Now, clearly, there is a lot of value in consumer tech startups. I don't think we can argue that. But there seems to be a frenzy to buy consumer tech stocks on the stock market, and their pricing seems to be out of whack. And marquee investors like Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, analysts like Ashwath Damodharan have said that they're clearly way overpriced. What is your view on these IPO stocks? What is your view on their valuations?
Well, valuations in the market is also a function of liquidity in the system, and you and me are all aware that how much of money has got printed, primed into all markets of the world, and how risk appetites have changed just because there is more supply of money than the market actually needs. And therefore, you are finding money flow across different markets. Let's do to an emerging market like India. Now, India is a large market. You can't take that away. We are also an economy which is $3 trillion almost in terms of size. And we have the wherewithal with the demographic dividends to still keep growing. We are growing. And apart from the last 2 years, where one because of COVID and one prior year, we had, let's say, a slowdown of sorts. But as an economy, you have everything internal for the growth engines to keep chugging along. So it excites a lot of people, which is why money finds its way. Second issue is that all consumer tech, platforms that are out there also have a proposition that is connecting with the consumers at large, and the platform plays allow you the ability to leverage a platform and sell not just one product or one service, but can offer multiple products and services if the engine at the back end is completely geared to take on more volume. And that's what the market, in my view, is personally excited about. I can't sit in judgment and say, is the valuation of this company that you talked about right or wrong? Only skeptics have views to offer. Experts have offered their views. The fact is, in the marketplace, the stock still changes hands at a valuation much higher. The question is that at that valuation, will the growth still continue to map what the customer or the shareholder's expectation is for him to make money if he's going and buying the stock today, for example? That's something that one will have to wait and see. And whether liquidity will allow the markets to sustain this upward buoyancy is also something that I'm not an expert on, so I can't opine, but that's something for everyone to keep at the back of your mind to make future investments in the market if you wish to take risk, you have the risk appetite to do so.
There is clearly value, and the fact is the stock markets are exuberant. It is a combination of that, and it is a combination of the potential in the future, and with some tweaks in the business model, it could potentially be very, very valuable. Uh, and clearly, the path to profitability is yet to be seen, but I'm sure as we all go along, it will emerge. Now, let's focus on the supply side. Let's focus on the fact that especially in the engineering sector, in almost all sectors, we are dependent heavily on China for components, for ingredients, so on and so forth. Has in any way our dependence on China for components and ingredients as part of our supply chain come down, or will you see that coming down over the next few years? Are we developing our own supply chain in a way that our dependence on China and other supply chain ecosystems come down?
I think it's a very good question because, in our view, again, China has been a factory to the world almost for 25 years now. And China used scale advantage to, offer products and offer it at very, very competitive rates. One can still, argue whether those rates are genuine rates or not. I'm not getting there, but the fact is that that led to, either you call it productive gains or deflationary kind of impact on a lot of industries, and also made a lot of industries in other markets uncompetitive.
Right.
Will this continue, and is it here to stay that we should look at China plus one as an, let's say, strategy? The answer is yes. Quite a lot of the global corporations are also doing it as I talk to you. We were fortunate, we do not have such significant large imports, and whatever we had, it was not necessarily only from China. China plays a very minuscule role, but just to share that with you, everyone is already working on a China plus one plan. I'm not saying that China will become zero. Okay, it's impossible because you are dependent on some critical components and maybe some critical materials where China has a favorable cost structure and an advantage that cannot be taken away that easily.
Or overnight replicated elsewhere.
Cannot be done. And second is that China has invested a lot of money on logistics, supply chain perfection, which a lot of us on this side of the world still have to do or have to adapt to. Because what does the customer want? If I'm ready to manufacture and export, he's going to ask me, boss, at what cost will your delivery come to me, and whether you commit the delivery in time. Most important, because his markets are also dynamic. So if the delivery doesn't reach in time, it is of no use to him. So we've got to invest in the back end part significantly, in my view. The other part is a lot of framework, which lots of governments are doing, including our government, is the PLI framework that has been talked about, where the government is now trying to encourage a lot of production in your domestic market. And it's a good policy framework across sectors that the government has announced. And we are pretty happy that this is actually out there, because for the first time, the policy framework actually encourages those who are driven by size and scale and not just distributed to all and sundry. So this will make, for sure, the industry in the formal sector become bigger. And those who are smaller will have to actually change over to, get hold of the policy subsidies that the government has announced to, enjoy the benefits of it. But this is a realistic policy framework, encouraging one, and is a beneficial one. And the government has given industries sufficient time to make the change happen. But if this all plays out with the government making substantial investments on infra, let me give you that sense as well. So the investments on the road building infra is fabulous, according to me. We are one of the beneficiaries, by the way, because most of our products also go for road building, work and equipment. And we see that our customers are demanding more and more of those products as well from us. So it's good in one way because it certainly brings logistics costs down. Logistics has been the bane in India. Supply inefficiencies have also been the bane because we Indians are not good at managing or anticipating supply challenges. Demand has always been there in this economy, but supply has always been fractured. So you got to then invest a lot into the back end supply chain and ensure that they also become equally big and strong with you as partners. And that's the way to go.
Good. I agree with you that everyone in the world is looking to diversify its supply chain, not be dependent on a single partner, seeing the dynamics in the last 17 months. And price is a very important factor, and certainty is a very important factor. And capability building takes some years. So clearly, I think everyone started to think and act. There will be some years when we'll be possibly be able to develop alternatives in some way. Now, let me, you spent so many years, almost 35 years now in the industry, and you've been in all functions. Uh, Let me ask you, if the government of India, if the policymakers had to do certain things that can make sure that India really leverages on the slogan that this decade is India's decade, and in some way uh, we move closer to our vision of being a 5 trillion economy?
Well, I think they are working on it consciously and continuously because if you've seen, there are a lot of good policy frameworks that have already been announced.
I mean, the movement to the EVs.
Movement to EVs is one of them. The EV subsidy framework is one of them. It's correct. The move to also gas as a source of fuel is the right way to do it because you have gas, you have the gas infrastructure, already laid out. Gas is a cleaner fuel, so it obviously means that you're burning lesser and lesser coal and fossil fuels for generating electricity. The move to get more renewable capacity up is also the right thing to do. Yes, it's going to destabilize some of the grids because there will be grid imbalance. But the grid imbalance can also be restructured, and now they are thinking of the draft policy on, how do they let go of distribution at the last mile end as well, which according to us is a good move. The fact that they've kind of agreed to privatize a lot of the ports and airports infrastructure is also a good move because the private sector is making the requisite investments, and that's needed for India to be competitive. On farm, the farm, rules, the agri rules that they've announced, the framework that they announced, of course, has met with a lot of challenge. But in our view, if you were to examine it in totality, it's a positive move if implemented right and correctly, and it will benefit a lot of the people across the value chain in the agri side. It also means that we as India have land parcels which are smaller in size and very fractured. Okay, so you got to ensure that at that level also there is some level of change happening. So we've seen models emerge where agri machinery is being now rented out, for example, which is also beneficial because for the farmer he was not getting labor, and if he is getting labor then he has a problem because the labor just doesn't want to stick on and work continuously on the farm. So there is the move to get to using machinery is important, but if he buys one, then he has to obviously invest. But if he rents one, then he obviously has to pay based on a variable costing method. So these are emerging models which are significantly exciting. There is a lot of investment that's also coming on the agri fund in terms of using agri tech solutions to make a farm become more productive. A farm use less water. The policy framework on, let's say, supplying water to all households, in our view, is a phenomenal policy. Because how much of India does get water 24 by 7, 365 days? A lot of India doesn't. A lot of it don't even get proper drinking water. So if they were to implement, industry will be investing. Industry is a beneficiary of this policy framework. We certainly are. So we are pretty happy about this, and we are encouraged by the policy framework response that the government is also throwing out.
Thank you so much. Now, let me move into my last two questions. First is a question in every sector, and overall in our consciousness as individuals, as corporates, as a media platform, there's a move towards sustainability. There's a move towards being sensitive to the planet. worrying about our natural resources. The move to EVs is one. Again, there is so much work to be done in taking water to every part of every home. And there is a Prime Minister Yojana, Har Ghar Har Nal, and I have friends who are personally associated with it. And I know those are issues that really need work. Give me a sense of how, for you, Kirloskar industry, sustainability is a deep way of life. And what have you done to enhance sustainability practices within Kirloskar industries?
Again, a good question. So this will vary from company to company, but the first measure is what kind of, let's say, resources are we using? So the first resource is, let's say, power, right? Are we dependent on power from the grid, or we are on solar or wind energy, for example? So quite a lot of our plants are already only utilizing solar. We also own wind farms, by the way. So we also use it for our purposes. And we are consciously going to make the effort to use more and more renewable power. Number one. Sustainability is not just about power alone. It is also about what materials you use, either in the factory that you build, products that you build, and how you actually use it in the factory and how you dispose it. So this is a fact and way of life. So these are significant changes that we got to bring about in the way we also work, and the processes that we will have to work on to change as well, and some of the materials along the way that will also change. Are we on the journey? Answer is yes. Are we on the journey? I'm saying in this fifth or sixth year. Answer is no. We are still on that journey. Maybe we are yet in the second gear and moving to the third or fourth gear, but we are there. As a goal, most corporations will move to this framework, and the environment around you, your competition around you, your customers around you, and all the people who are stakeholders will force you to do it. So if you don't do it, you'll be left behind. And I think it's a welcome move. For the first time, I'm seeing a concerted effort by stakeholders all across the world. It's not just the investors who also have ESG framework, but across the world, a heightened awareness of ESG. The boards are also getting equally enlightened and conscious. And we are happy that this is there for all of us to live better in the future, or if not for us, for our children to live a healthier life in the future.
But sustainability is becoming a part of the fabric of an organization, and it has to be intertwined with strategy, and it is a journey. And ESG is becoming really important part of the conversations in boardrooms in terms of where to invest and what initiatives to invest in. My last question to you, as a leader, as someone who leads an organization, who works with other leaders, what is the biggest change that has come into your thinking in the last 17, 18 months?
Well, I think I would answer it in only one way. It's brought about, first the fear was, will we survive? Okay. Now the thing is, can we grow faster? And therefore, there's a heightened level of excitement saying that we are seeing growth. We have the platforms in play and we have the resources, the teams in play, and the cash, and the ability to use cash and leverage to grow. Markets exist. There is no problem per se of demand. Global markets have opened up, so there is excitement. The issue only is, and the challenge remains, is where do we channel our resources to address what part of the spectrum first, and which is the one that is going to be more profitable as time goes by, and will it sustain? So we got to work on all of these, but it's exciting times because now you don't have to worry, can I generate enough demand? I don't see that in the current context, to be frank with you, and that's exciting for us. So all the resources have to be directed to say, if we have growth, how do we grow faster?
Fantastic. So clearly, we moved into an abundance mindset. They say where people see adversity, leaders see opportunity. And clearly, you are looking at it like that. And as you rightly said, right at the start, you said we looked at every cost driver. The beauty about the pandemic has been, it's been a mixed bag. There's been loss of lives and livelihood. But the beauty has been that we've gone back to basics. We questioned every driver of our business. We've not said to ourselves that this is not possible. everything is possible. For the first time, we've been open about things. So I think it has helped. Also, the mantra of less is more.
That's correct.
You know, growth is possible with less resources. And I agree with you that the next few years for India and the Indian economy will be breathtaking, growthful years. And I'm hoping there's no third wave. At least I'm hoping, because
Let's
that
all
can
hope
set us
so.
back. That will set us back again by at least a year. Uh, and more importantly, loss of lives in any wave is the most serious casualty. Forget the economic development. So thank you, Mr. Mahesh Chhabria, for talking to PW Business World. We look forward to more conversations with you, and I'm sure Kirloskar Industries will continue to grow and invest in the right growth oriented sectors. We wish you luck, and we look forward to having more interactions with you. For those of you who missed the conversation, you can watch it on the YouTube channel of BW Business World next week, or read an abridged version of the interview in the next issue of BW Business World, or read it in a full transcript on Tuesday on businessworld.in. We'd like to thank our guest, Mr. Mahesh Chhabria, who's the Managing Director of Kirloskar Industries, for joining us and giving us inputs on how he has utilized the last 17 months to lead Kirloskar Industries. We congratulate you on your rebranding, and I'm sure it reflects that growth mindset that you just articulated in your conversation with us. Thank you so much once again, and we wish you good luck.
Thank you, Dr. Batra. Thank you.